right, moving on to the last panel discussion for the day. Our final policy panel discussion is titled as Frameworks and Imperatives for Evolving Communication Standard. This session holds immense significance as it delves into the critical aspects of updating and adapting communication standard in our rapidly evolving technological landscape. All right. Our panel esteemed experts will engage in discussions surrounding several key topics, including the necessity for flexible frameworks, the imperatives of cybersecurity, the pivotal role of global collaboration setting future communication norms, especially the standards of 6G that we talked about in Pradeep sir's session as well. Allow me to introduce our distinguished panelists. Moderator for the session is Mr. Prasanto K. Roy, Managing Director, FTI Consulting. Prasanto K. Roy is a versatile professional with a broad spectrum of expertise in public policy, technology, and media. His primary focus areas encompasses public policy and advocacy within the realms of technology, fintech, and new energy. We have our panelists, Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Sidharth Shukla, Joint Advisor, QoS, TRAI. Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Sidharth Shukla holds the position of Joint Advisor, Quality of Service at the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. With his extensive background and expertise, Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Shukla plays a vital role in overseeing and advising on matters related to the quality of service within the telecommunication industry. Our next panelist, Anjali Hans, SVP Public Policy, Vodafone India. Anjali has been an integral part of the telecom industry since its early days. Accumulating nearly 25 years of experience, her journey began back in 1998 when she joined the Industry Association, COAI. Our next panelist, Arvind Bali, CEO, Telecom Sector Skill Council. Arvind Bali is highly accomplished business leader with an impressive track record spanning over 35 years. His expertise lies in effectively managing diverse business streams, consistently delivering global respected outcomes. Our next panelist, Professor N.K. Goyal, President, CMAI, Association of India, and Chairman, TEMA. Professor Bali is an eminent figure in the telecom industry as telecom father figure, with a remarkable tenure of 52 years in the field. Ladies and gentlemen, last but not the least, our panelist, Commander Aditya Varma, has recently joined RAH Infotech, a distinguished veteran of the Indian Navy. Commander Aditya Varma brings with him over 2 decades of extensive experience in information communication technology, cybersecurity, supply chain operation, and HR training. So without further ado, let's go for the final panel discussion. Prasanto sir, over to you.
Thanks so much, and we'd love to keep this interactive, so right from the beginning, if you have questions or interventions, we don't want to run out of time and then we don't have questions. So we are looking at frameworks and imperatives for evolving communication standards. What does that mean? We want to look at imperatives, business imperatives, things which are happening, evolving cybersecurity concerns, QoS issues, what's driving us to figuring out what do we need in terms of evolving communication standards as we are clearly moving forward, 5G, 6G. We've heard quite a bit about the 6G vision. There's a fairly visionary document, 180 page or something, which has spelled out a lot of the things that align with India's directions and needs. So I'd like to just put this very quickly to the panel that in terms of imperatives, where do you see this? And I'll just give a little background to the conversations we were having outside. And Sidharth, I think we missed you in that one. But essentially, the kind of things we were discussing is that from the imperatives, let's say the national imperatives, okay, clearly there is a lot of imperatives from digital public infrastructure, DPI, okay, which depend on QoS, for example. But we haven't really looked at the integrated QoS. It's been more underlying, the telco, response time, etc. But if a payment fails or payment declines, do we need to look at more? So these are the sort of imperatives that we've looked at. Cybersecurity, there's been a lot of imperatives driving different directions of policy there. the NSDTS framework, which required a lot of supply chain declaration for equipment supplies to the telecom sector. We've seen multiple areas where cybersecurity imperatives, but what can we do there to maybe collaborate better with entities, with countries that we have a increasingly trusted relationship with? This is the sort of framework that we discussed, and we'd like to keep this kind of focused on useful, usable outcomes, maybe things which we need to also suggest to the government or to policy stakeholders. So in other words, try and keep it focused. It's a very short, we have about 30 minutes. So I'd like to therefore, I don't know if we can start off with, would you like to give it a go? And just brief introductory points, bullet points which we take up.
I'll just stick to the point of quality of service which he mentioned. I joined TRAI at a point where 5G was being launched. Thereafter it got launched, and thereafter, the issues of quality of service came into the environment, in the papers. So what happened is when 5G was designed and launched in India, we suddenly found that the 4G network is not doing very well, surprisingly. And there were complaints all around, and what moderator just mentioned, that everybody started complaining about quality of service, delivery of messages, quality of voice. And that was a time when from the ministry itself and we at TRAI, we just started analyzing the root cause analysis. And then we realized that the quality of service of 5G networks implemented by the two primary operators, the handling of voice was not as per requirement. So there was no priority for voice packets, end to end. So everybody was looking at his own area of subnet. So this is where we push the TSPs, and we found that whenever a new standard comes in, suddenly some more vulnerabilities come out. So as you mentioned, when 6G would be on the anvil, we'll have issues because when you see the document of 3GPP or ITU, you find that it promises quite many things in its document. Like if you say the 5G, you'll say the latency less than 5 milliseconds. But when we do the special assessment of 5G networks in India, we find it is around 15 or 20 milliseconds. 4G is around 30 milliseconds. So you find that the latency is not much improved. What we see of 5G in India today, if I go by the last assessment we did last month, is that it has that enhanced mobile broadband experience better. The throughput is around 700 to 800, depends on the operator of 5G. And latency is just 15, 12 milliseconds. So effectively, you see all the benefits of 5G have not come to the end customer as of now. So there are gaps, and maybe it will improve. But what looks on the document and what comes on the network, there is still a gap which needs to be covered. And other verticals like IoT, low latency services are still not anywhere to be seen in the telecom industry as of now. This is my input when you say when new standards come in, what are the problems which happen? A set network gets destabilized for some time, there are complaints, then you get used to it, and then the network matures and delivers what it promises.
Okay, terrific. I think that's a great start. I'm going to come back to you on some of these points, and especially this wider thing of the imperatives of digital public infrastructure. And there it's not very easy to pinpoint responsibility if RBI says turnaround time of 300 milliseconds for payments or a decline, and it fails repeatedly. Who's responsible? So I want to come back to you on that. Anjali, from the viewpoint of a telco, how do you see this? What are the imperatives driving you to
thanks.
standards?
I will touch upon another aspect of 5G plus and 6G, the road to it. While Colonel Shukla has talked about standards and quality of service, I would like to talk a little bit about the policy and regulatory framework. And one of our most important constituents really is sitting to my right-hand side, about who I'm really going to be addressing a lot of my submissions to say that, as we moved from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, the pace of technology has been changing so fast. What we are finding is that, the same service can be offered on multiple technologies, or the same technology can be used for offering multiple services. And therefore now, I think one of the suggestions that I have is that for regulation to keep pace with technology, we have to move to a lighter touch, because we really don't know which way it's going to evolve. And 2G or 3G norms may not really fit into a 5G kind of framework. So the TRAI is already consulting on a few things. It's doing a framework for OTT communication services, recognizing that there is, some convergence of services that is happening. The way to look at it is a review of all the regulations that are currently applicable to the industry, to the sector, do a regulatory impact analysis, and try and arrive at a light touch, future fit policy and regulatory thing. That would be my first suggestion for evolution to 5G and 6G.
Okay, that's fascinating, and I'm
Can I
sure
just,
we'll, yes, please.
I
On
think I'll
lighter
just,
touch, I think we'll have a lot
she has,
to
just
say.
1 minute I'll take. Actually, she has touched the things which we have done in last 6 months. What we have done is we have combined, earlier at TRAI we had, as a regulator, we had different regulations for broadband, wireless, as well as cellular and basic telephony. What I have been instrumental is that we've got all the 3 regulations now combined in one, and it is technology agnostic. So we are ready for 6G, because now we are only touching the metrics, say latency, throughput. We just define what should be the wireless technology, what KPIs, the key performance indices, should be. So now it is not, now we are 5G ready, we are already 5G ready, and we will be 6G ready also with this new concept, and it is more open and more dynamic in nature. That is what we have done, just to give an answer to you.
Okay, super. On lighter touch, I mean, I'm going to come back on that, but in many other sectors, including the DPI and the payment sectors, it's, for a long time, conversations between lighter touch, and the RBI is traditionally not a light touch regulator, but it has been light touch on payments, but it is getting heavier as 800 million people or whatever, 600 million people are beginning to use digital payments. And maybe it's a point to come back to. Arvind, Bali, could I come to you from the Sector Skill Council point of view, and as we are evolving in standards, how do you see that mapping to the kind of skill needs which are kind of rapidly changing? So a few thoughts from you on that.
Yeah, so fortunately for all of us in telecom, thing what we enjoy is dynamic changes what we have. The world is changing very fast, and we are at the center of it. So much happening around us. But when it is happening, it is also throwing a lot of challenges. The biggest challenge is that finding people to do the work. Secondly, those who are already there, I think to skill them, reskill them, upskill them. That is the biggest thing on which work is required to be done and is being done. Now, some of the subjects like cyber security, for example, even the people who are maybe 0.01% of India's population who knows this subject, who are in ICT sector, I think they also understand very little, right? There's so many issues, so many challenges, and managing them, and then expecting rest of the country knowing about it is something, which is very difficult. So the only solution what I feel is, one, I think from school level itself, I think it should be taught. Then, every college, every university, it should be done. It should not be just limited to electronic, IT, and those kind of professions. It should be, because it is now impacting everyone. So, even doctors, bankers, everybody, rather, finance, I think it is impacting the most. So, in my opinion, I think all these work, what is happening, whether it is happening on cloud or whether it is happening on complete chain from 5G to 6G or IoTs or machine learning, wherever there is connectivity, wherever there is internet, I think one, things are changing very fast, and secondly, because of these changes, adapting to it, and also securing yourself around all the challenges which are coming, I think it is becoming big. So our role is increasing. I think from Skill Council point of view, our work is increasing, and we are trying to reach out to many places, and the government, our ministry, everybody is expecting and they're looking towards us that we should do a lot of work. So there, I think the most important thing which is coming in and which is expected, and if we really want to achieve very good results, so far it was expected that either companies were doing their internal skilling, or they were expecting government to fund the skilling. I think this is the time when I think this has to be merged, because even the skilling which is happening in the corporates or private organizations, it should come under a common framework, because ultimately our talent pool is not only for India, now it is for the world. And telecom, we are going to be leaders in the world for next 10, 15 years. With 6G technology, we're expecting that we'll be rolling out networks, we'll be selling technologies to the world. So if that is the case, I think the complete talent pool has to be brought under a particular certification, and the database has to be available so that it can be best used by everyone.
Okay, again, some great points, and I'm going to come back to you on this, on how you see this mapping to the changing, 4G, 5G, 6G in terms of the pool numbers. Because on the IT sector, which I work much more closely with, including on the skilling side, there's obviously a lot of concern there about AI replacing a lot of the entry-level and mid-level jobs. Already it has replaced the voice side, which fortunately moved out of India quite a bit and so on. But I'll come back to you on this.
Yeah, but I think one related point.
Yes.
In telecom, what we are finding, especially at starting levels, 3 to 5 year experienced professionals, other industries, I think they take a lot of talent from telecom industry, because probably we have got the best professionals, right? So we have all the time 30–40% attrition, so we have to fill it. All the time we need to have trained manpower.
Yeah, and a lot of the physical infrastructure rollout and all that would remain in terms of, AI is not replacing that.
Right.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Right. So, Professor Goyal, from your point of view, here, I mean, a couple of things I'd like to just touch upon. We've been talking of a lot of the standards evolution driven by imperatives like cybersecurity, Make in India. We spoke about the NSDTS framework. There is, quite a bit of pressure there to look at the supply chain, antecedents of components and so on. But these are common across multiple countries which we are sourcing from and dealing with, including the US. There are bilateral trade agreements. Do you see a role for harmonization of these in terms of standards, maybe supply chain standards, so that every country doesn't have to discover whether this component came from a trusted source or not, and there can be trust on each other's trust, as it were. So just some thoughts on the harmonization of standards at a global level as we are going forward into 6G.
Thank you very much. Let me set a target for me, 1.5 to 2 minutes, and 4 points to cover. Starting from Colonel Sidharth, and you said, new technologies. Is it not a fact that we always hear of something new which will come up after 5 years? While we are implementing 4G, we talked of 5G. 5G is being implemented, and we are talking of 6G now. The fact is, which I say on the world agenda and world conferences, is that technology experts fail to deliver what they promise, and to safeguard themselves, they will talk of the next level of technology. I'm making this with the 100% proof, and everybody can know this thing. Now, another thing is, and that is why they result into so-called vulnerability, which Colonel Sidharth talked, because in the race to make technology, they don't bother about the cyber security parts, or the national security parts, or the vulnerability parts. Nobody is bothered how this technology, this is my second point, will be used. After our operators have put in lots of money, now on record, they are crying, we don't have any use case, or no use, or nobody using it. So this is another problem we face. My third point was about cyber and AI. My senior, Mr. Bali, spoke of the teaching. The fact is, we introduced my association, because I'm also president of Cyber Security Association and lots of other associations. We introduced AI compulsory in class 9th to 12th in CBSE 3 years before, and we failed to get a teacher. So ultimately, we made it optional. Now, for the last 10 years, our association is trying for cyber teaching as a education in the university as a regular course. We started around 4 years back in Ranchi University, and we failed because of teachers. And again, there was a renewed effort with combined cooperation of lots of government and private industry. We launched last year or this year BTech Cybersecurity in Uttarakhand Technical University, and we are on the merge of closing it down because we don't find the answer to teachers. Same thing happens in the case of AI. When it comes to harmonizing global standard, it is a fancy statement, I want the latest state-of-art thing. But let us face the fact that whenever a new technology comes up, they will say the 100 parameters and meet 70 or 60 or 80 or so, and not bother for 20. And by the time we try to ask them 20, they will go for the next technology. And I have on record that when we in India were implementing fixed line network, we imported switches from 2-3 countries. It's on record. They were not able to meet the parameters, so 5% was withheld till to date, even after 20 years. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think you covered a lot of ground in that. We're going to come back to some of those. Aditya, for you, and let me just reiterate and rephrase some of this. So much of concern on cyber security and standards that it intersects with. Telecom has been, I think, the first off the block in terms of critical infrastructure areas to get a very aggressive set of demands on supply chain, on ensuring supply chain security. But there are 6 other critical infrastructure areas, power, etc. We are probably going to get to that. So I think there's a good case here to look at standardizing this framework so that everyone doesn't have to go through the same pain of discovering a new set of things to report and so on. How do you see this harmonization and where the standard, the cybersecurity requirements actually intersects with our needs for standards?
Prasanto, thank you for that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So it starts at cybersecurity, it ends at cybersecurity. And why I say that is because when we look at telecom today is not about 5G. It's more, I would say, about those applications, those services which have to reach every individual who is seeking instant gratification in today's day and age. The applications are evolving, they are becoming very heavy. You need heavy throughputs for those applications, and that is wherein 5G comes into the puzzle. But the 5G implementation, a lot has been spoken about. Maybe when we talk about throughputs and QoS, we have to understand that when we become a standalone network, which is direct connectivity to the core, when we have the requisite backhaul which is required, we would actually get that true 5G experience. Of course, a lot of work is being done on that. Now, with the high throughput, with the high connectivity, with these many applications which are coming in, why I'm harping upon applications is because it's all about the application vulnerability and cybersecurity. Applications and hardware. When we talk about the supply chain has got 2 components, your hardware component and your software component. There are various attacks which have happened. They are planned attacks which have happened by non-state actors as well as the state actors, wherein the malware has actually been planted at the time of design of the application. So that's why the concept of shift left, security by design. At every stage when the application is being developed or a hardware is being developed, we need to make sure that there is no malicious code or hardware which gets integrated into the supply chain. So maybe what is required is a robust check and balance to ensure that, imagine a supply chain for a product with the components being manufactured in some 5 different countries, finally getting a stamp of assembled, say, in Mexico and landing up into critical infrastructure which actually may be handling some very critical confidential information. The problem lies there. So here is where come the standards. The standards right now, what is required, so we've got various cybersecurity standards. The way we've got telecom standards, we have got something called NIST, NIST standards, the American standards. We've got ISO standards, which are generally followed by the European Union. When we look at data, we've got the GDPR of the European Union, we've got HIPAA, which is followed in the US. We have now recently got our own DPDP, but I think what is very important is, at least the challenge which we are facing right now is that the application is running all over the world and it has to comply with different standards everywhere. So the challenge right now is how do you map these 4 or 5 different standards to get a compliance? So while standards are good, they're very important. Unfortunately, many a time it is just about ticking the boxes. That is something which has to be looked at very seriously, because if security is imbibed as a culture, I think that is when the standards will be accepted better and would actually help in the ease of doing business instead of becoming a hindrance.
So again, that's some great points there. What I will come back to you on is on the supply chain security. You know, are there standards? Are there evolving standards? We seem to be discovering different ways of doing it, including reporting factory addresses of components and so on. And this is all hardware. And you know, the big threat, you know, the entire exposure. A lot of it is going to be from software, and software which is updated over the air, software which is on the middleware, and so, you know, what's evolving there in terms of standards, I want to come back to. So, I'm going to just take a quick break so that we have time for questions or inputs from the audience. And very quickly, if we could take up the questions, and then we'll just run through the round of questions I've left with. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, Prasanto, I'm Arvind. I hear from you and from the Prasanto, I'm Madhav. I hear from you and from the panelists. And we have been talking about harmonizing standards. Harmonizing standards is important, but why don't we see it in India when we talk in our context?
Sorry, the last bit I missed. Why don't we see it in
harmonizing
India?
Standards
Yes.
is important,
Yeah.
but when we talk in India, we don't see it there happening.
Okay, do you mean harmonizing across different, let's say, bodies?
No, yeah, exactly. So when we talk about harmonizing standards in US, we are either mapping with the NIST or some of their
Okay, all right. Would you
their
like to-
associations.
Got it.
But here in India,
Yeah.
when we talk about standards, still we are talking about evolving standards. We don't see harmonizing standards. That is precisely your question to the panelists.
Right, yeah, please go ahead.
I will take up this question. We do not believe in one country, one standard. US believes in, Europe believes in. We have, for telecom, we have 3-4 bodies making standards. TSJSI, TEC, BIS, MITI, etc. Everybody studies all the world standards and makes a common standard, and no standard matches each other. It is very difficult for us to enforce a standard on the operators, enterprises, users, and your home. That is where the harmonizing fails. Second point, when we say harmonize, you harmonize today, and telecom people knows every 6-7 months there is a new release coming up from 3GPP. So you go on harmonizing it every 6 months. Our view to the government has been, why don't you simply say one line, we will follow 3GPP? They will not do this thing. This is the reason of harmonizing. And third reason, I said before, there are 100 parameters. And if we talk of Make in India, we start making today, we'll meet 80 or 70 or 90, we will be put out in the tender. Thank you.
Yeah, I think very well articulated there. I'll just add one point that in many cases where we struggle with trying to figure out what was the objective for a rule or a, you know, so data localization was a case in point where on April 6, 2016, 2018, the RBI said that, you know, all data should be kept here for payments, etc. You know, we struggle with the exact objective because you know that physically where the data is not going to really tell you that, okay, now the police can come and study it because it is in Delhi, etc. So, you know, and then there are, now what has happened is there's a sectoral regulator and there is the DPDP Act, which is saying something slightly different. So then there's a question of which to, so there's then a harmonization question or issue which happens between the sectoral regulator as well as maybe an overarching kind of a frame which is there. So these are some interesting challenges this is not necessarily connected with just 5G and 6G, but we are finding this across, and of course the DPDP Act affects everybody. So any other?
Should it be taken as an imperative in India for harmonizing standards? Because
it is,
not
yeah.
harmonizing, we will have more challenges to face.
Yeah, so anybody would like to take that up? I think just one thing is that very often cyber security or national security is being sort of defined as a starting imperative. When that happens, everybody steps back because, you know, if you say, why are you doing data localization, national security, I'm not going to question that, right? So that is a problem we've been facing a little bit. So would you like to sing and then?
So I would just like to add, maybe from the cybersecurity point of view. So in today's day and age, you know, right now I could be speaking to a IP in US or a IP in Australia or a IP in, when I'm saying IP, because it's a network. And in every location, they're following a different standard. So harmonizing of standards, maybe I did try to bring it out. That is where the mapping comes in. Trust me, everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants privacy, everyone wants security of data, nobody wants to get breached, no one wants a ransomware attack, no one wants to get phished. And everyone in their good logic, I would say, have come up with a framework. So if it is ISO 27001, 1002 framework, if it is a NIST 853 framework, we discussed about it. We are supposed to implement our National Cyber Security Reference Framework. Everyone is almost talking the same thing. We change a few jargons. The restrictions and relaxations, that's important, is, as I have seen, my personal take is GDPR actually is a much more harder thing to implement maybe compared to DPDP, but that's my personal take. So I think the government has excised their good thought because we need to, it's going to be baby steps. DPDP is not going to get implemented in a day. So harmonization, yes, but you ask any organization which is actually operating across the globe, they are struggling with some 7 or 8 different standards. And with that is why I mentioned the issue of the ease of doing business coming in. Sidharth?
I just want to put in this word that we all want to harmonize our standards, but our domains are very different. And a cybersecurity expert like him or a telecom expert like me, our aim is same. But what happens is the domain requirements are different. So what we do is within our sectors, we want to make what she said, that get the regulations lighter or the check and balances easier. But you expect a single organization to do all different type of, regulating different types of verticals will be very difficult, and he'll not do justice to that sector. So in one way, our country, you find it's a very complex. You can't equate with any of the countries overseas, US or Europe. We have to customize those standards according to our requirement. And over the years, we have found that that has been very fruitful. UPI is one of the examples where we have customized the payment standards according to our requirements, and that we found that it is the best practice in the world. So in the same way, what we have to believe in ourselves that our, different verticals trying to harmonize within the sectors will benefit in the long run.
Okay.
I will agree with
yes,
that. I will just take 10 seconds. Agree with you. And my question to the world is, harmonize with whom? ISO, 3GPP, IEEE, ITU, or what?
So
Right,
Prasanto,
Anjali.
I just wanted to add one point you touched upon, cross-border data flows and data localization. So many versions of the data protection bill dividing the data into personal data, sensitive personal data, critical personal data, saying this will be localized, this can be mirrored, this is free to flow. Luckily, the form of the act right now is simplified because it recognizes that it's difficult to manage, mixed data sets, and it's basically said that we will just, give a blacklist of countries or locations where it cannot go. So that part is really welcome, except that there is a caveat in the law which says that wherever, a sector has stricter regulations, the stricter regulations will apply. Now, telecom, unfortunately, happens to be the one with one of the stricter regulations, which basically says user information cannot be sent outside India. Now, I don't know what the genesis of that is and whether that really holds good in today's world. It also puts us at a disadvantage versus, other, so to speak, communication players who do not have this restriction. So I would like to really urge the TRAI, maybe that this is when I talk about regulatory impact assessment and reviewing of regulations, to see whether this particular line in my license really makes sense in today's world, and if there is a need to narrow focus that interpretation to say that this is something which will apply only to the telecom MNOs and it doesn't apply to the others, and therefore there is a reason. So otherwise, I think the act is a practical and balanced one.
Yeah, so I think we've encountered that the sectoral regulator clashing with, and the RBI again has a stricter set of norms for data localization. In fact, to the extent that you really can't even process data outside now because of the T+24, etc. So all the Visa, MasterCard, everyone is getting to processing, even though the law doesn't say you have to process here. So this is a problem that multiple sectors are facing, and if you take telecom, payments, banking, you've covered, I think, half the data which is there, which is being covered by stricter regulation than the Data Protection Act. We had one more question, then I want to just get back to, okay, if not, I'll come back to you. We have just 3 minutes. So I just want to get to some of these points that we left with in the first round. So Sidharth, on the QoS side, the larger question of the imperatives of DPI, payments, etc., does it require a fresh look at QoS standards? Can you now really isolate QoS of the telco underlying telecom system from the application?
So the TCCPR, if you go through the issue which is dealing with these spams and the messages and many incidents which are happening about the data theft as well as financial theft, we have addressed that. Secondly, what Aditya has mentioned, we have to realize there was a panel before us which said that 5G network is very secure. So I want to add more into it. From 4G onward, the end user device is now an IP address. So wherever a network, you can send an IP packet to the end device, it is vulnerable and cybersecurity applies to it. So hence, at many places, the overall rules, it may be not good for ease of doing business, but in the overall scheme of things, it is more beneficial for the user. Cybersecurity will be a big threat if you don't address it. Because whenever you have an application and your phone is like any desktop or a PC, so these stricter rules will one way benefit the end user because the loss may be quite a big amount of, in terms of money or in terms of the security of the country. And slowly we'll find a method to manage by the telcos. That is what I would like to address. The cybersecurity we have to address. Maybe we need antiviruses in all the phones in future because it is similar device like a laptop or a desktop. And the network provides you the same speeds which the wireline speeds have been providing till now.
Anyone wants to add anything on that front, on moving to a much wider perspective because of, so India has this enormous focus on DPIs, digital public infrastructure, CoWIN, Aadhaar, Jam Trinity, UPI, NDR, I don't know, I'm leaving out 5 platforms off the top of my mind. But clearly the reliance on telecom, on absolutely reliable, instantaneous, low latency telecom infrastructure
actually,
to serve
I'll
the
just
bottom
tell
of
you,
the pyramid is
yes,
going to be very high.
Actually, there is now we should not say it's a telecom network or a ISP network. It is a broadband network, whether it is wireline or wireless. We have to look into that. It's a wireless broadband network. And all the issues which we are having with a broadband wireline now are in place with the broadband wireless network.
Yeah, and it's mostly wireless as far as the numbers go. So
I'm adding for 30 seconds to what Kandar said. Sir, the cyber or the national security risk does not confine to the government network or the telecom network, or railways or NGC. It equally affects this hotel itself or any other enterprise. So my request, if I can make to you, let us plan for a national secure type of standard which applies to everything everywhere. And our irony is that a mobile telephone, which we know is the most risky for cyber, is not being tested in country even though we have a rule. Thank you.
thanks. Yeah.
So it becomes difficult for me not to.
Yes.
So very pertinent point. The number of, so I'm wearing a smartwatch. I've got a mobile phone. There may be people here with 2 mobile phones. So anyone with 2 mobile phones and 1 smartwatch, you've got 3 IP devices on you. You've got 3 attack surfaces. from which you can be attacked. And the issue is, I would not even call it, what we are talking about is a cloud right now. When we talk about a cloud, we all are actually connected to a cloud. So that is how vulnerable we are. And a user on any network, though we have got logical barriers, if you are on a phone, if your enterprise is on a phone, if any organization is on a phone, you are actually connected to the same network. And yes, as Goyalji rightly brought out, the issue here is it is a national problem. The way, so I don't know how many of you have read recently, so CDOT has come out with something called Trinetra. It is a fantastic application. It is a full cybersecurity stack. And it is in the process of development. But I think it's a fantastic initiative. They are looking at an end-to-end cybersecurity solution, which, if it works out well, would, again, would be a great step in self-reliance. Because right now, most of the established cybersecurity products are coming from outside. And we must remember that cybersecurity products are also essentially applications. So when we talk about the supply chain issue, you never know, the defender itself may be bugged. So I'll rest it at that.
Great point there. Arvind, I'll leave the last words with you, the question that I left with you, and partly you answered it saying that there's so much attrition you need to keep filling. But do you see the scale of, the industry in terms of numbers actually going up, staying stable? Like in the IT side, clearly where we are looking at, there are 4 to 5 million people attributed as employees to the industry. There's concern about millions of them being disrupted by AI. So where do you see that number? How does it stabilize with AI and with the changing standards? And before that, I just want to say, is there any last question which I'll provision for? If not, okay, go ahead, sir. Last words yours.
Yes, so telecom today, when we actually talk, most of the people, first impression is like 3 operators or 4 operators and 2-3 tower companies, but actually there are more than 6,000 companies which are into different fields. And we have got almost like 30 different streams which are related to telecom, and it's ever growing, right? And everywhere there is a huge demand, and this demand is coming from different, you can say, reasons. As I said, one is attrition is very high, and attrition is coming for something very, very simple. Like for example, when EV vehicles came, for battery chargers, etc., the best people they got was from handset industry. Those people knew battery, they knew the charging, right? So maximum people went from there. So that way, like telecom industry is one which is giving talent to all other industries. So that is happening. Then also, new streams and new areas are increasing. There the demand is there. And one biggest thing which is going to happen is, and I'm very, very positive, optimistic, and also feel very happy about it, is that IT industry for last 20-25 years brought so much of honor to India, right? We are respected world over, and we are supplying talent to world. Today, telecom has also become an overlap between electronics and IT, right?
And software.
And software in a big way. And ultimately, because of this, India is going to be the biggest technology provider to the world. As even Prime Minister Modi has given a vision document last year, 6G, when it comes in 2030, by that time, I think India will be exporting technology. And export happens always with technical support. A lot of professionals will be going. So that is another big stream which is opening. So in my opinion, I think it is rather be ever increasing demand, and there will be always skill gap. We publish a skill gap report every year, and we find that the gap is always increasing. We are never able to fulfill that. Coming to one of the points Mr. Goyal said, that okay, we talk about skilling and we feel that there is a need, and we try to establish some setups, but then we don't have good trainers. No, that there is absolutely right. The issue is that government has got schemes, and a lot of work can be done, but problem is it is such a, maybe more effort is required in organizing all that. Government has got now funds for train the trainer. There are a number of unutilized funds lying, but mobilizing that is also becoming a challenge. And the last point which is related, which you very rightly said, that will AI take the jobs? Journal. So this is a very good phrase that yes, those who will not be knowing AI will lose the jobs. So we all have to really know AI, we all have to learn it, we have to all get associated with it in one form or the other. Like in my organization, like it is a compulsive learning, AI, and we do every quarterly a test, check, and if people don't know, they are put on PIP, right? So it is becoming so critical now. And this criticality is required to bring efficiency, to bring quality, to give the best performance to the clients or stakeholders.
Terrific. I think we've covered a lot of ground. We are out of time. We've covered almost everything except, I think, Anjali, the light touch regulation part we'll have to keep for another panel, which is, I think, a whole panel by itself. Absolutely. We'll discuss that.
I addressed it to the regulator.
All right. Thank you so much. Over back to you.